Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor thing. My mother-in-law, Iris, came to our place and said that, harassing me in various ways. Iris seems to believe that it's only right for her daughter to live her life exactly as she wishes. As a mother who raised her daughter single-handedly, I can somewhat understand her feelings, but it's no excuse for her to harass me. The removal workers will be here any minute. When I told Iris that, it happened just as I said. The removal workers arrived and started taking things out. Watching things being carried out of my room, Iris turned pale, but the fact that those are moving to another room in the same apartment seemed to crush her even more. Tiffany and I started explaining about a certain person to Iris. I hope this wakes Iris up. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm a 38-year-old man with a decent fortune. Growing up, my family was quite poor, so having 3 meals a day was nothing but a dream. I only have painful memories of the times when the delicious smell from the neighbor's house made me realize it was mealtime. As a child, I used to blame my parents, wishing I was born into a normal family. Looking back, I realize it was cruel, but I was just a kid who couldn't yet understand other circumstances. Normally, I would have expected a scolding for such remarks, but my parents never got angry with me. Instead, they would often hold back from eating food so that they could give more to me. The memory of how thin they always looked makes me feel sad every time I think about it. Eat up and grow big, we're fine, my dad would say. Don't worry about anything, Michael. It's a parent's wish to see their child healthy and growing, my mom would add. By the time I was in high school, I wanted to repay the unconditional love they had shown me. But there's only so much a child can do. I tried working part-time jobs at convenience stores and delivering newspapers, but it hardly made a significant impact. So, I spent a lot of time thinking and planning for my future and work, learning from others and researching on school computers. The reason our family was poor was that both of my parents had become sick. They demonstrated leadership in a low-wage work environment, working too hard for the sake of their colleagues. As a result, they became unable to work and lost their income. Afterwards, they managed to get by on their savings, but I knew I couldn't let that cycle repeat with me. That's why I was determined not to fail in my career. For that reason, I decided not to be someone who works for others but to be someone who leads. Being just an employee wouldn't significantly increase my salary, and it would involve a lot of hardships. While some might find fulfillment in such work, and I don't mean to dismiss them, I had to aim higher for my parents' sake, so I chose to start my own business and employ others. Once I made that decision, I worked tirelessly, taking on multiple part-time jobs to save up capital for my startup. A few years after graduating high school, I established a food company, expanding its scale through strategic thinking. My smooth progress was probably thanks to networking through social media since my student days and creating a website, among other efforts. Though there were tough times, my company grew steadily. By carefully researching and catering to current trends like natural ingredients and health consciousness, I guess I've become quite successful. Now, my company has grown to such a scale that there's hardly anyone in the area who doesn't know about it. It now stands shoulder to shoulder with major corporations. Caught up in my work, when I finally took a moment to reflect, I realized I was in a position others might envy. I live on the top floor of a high-rise apartment, and I have a beautiful wife. Though there used to be no people who would call me a bottom dweller, they are also nowhere to be found now. I should feel fulfilled, but lately, I've been feeling unusually anxious. It's probably the shadow of my impoverished childhood lingering over me. That's what I thought at the time. Feeling the warm spring air as I headed to work, I was on my way to my president room. Since the room is on the top floor of a 10-story building, it takes a while to get there. I entered the elevator, which happened to be open, and looked at my fellow passengers. I discreetly observed them, but none seemed to have health issues or appeared overworked and haggard. As a president with the power to direct others, I never wanted to manipulate people at will. Considering the motivation behind starting my business, it might seem more profitable to let employees work hard, like horses pulling carriages, without regard to their personal circumstances. However, making others unhappy to bring happiness to my parents wouldn't please them at all. My parents always put others before themselves, so they would be devastated if the company I run turned into one of those notorious sweatshops. Therefore, as someone in a leadership position, I must care for my employees to ensure my parents' happiness with honest earnings. While pondering these thoughts, an employee exclaimed, "Huh!" Looking over, I saw the male employee tilting his head, staring at his hand. I wonder where I got this injury. Strange. Observing the back of the young male employee's hand, there seemed to be a red line as if scratched by something. Perhaps the wound had opened while he was walking, as a bit of blood was starting to seep out. Seeing this, I took a handkerchief from my pocket and handed it to him. "Are you okay? Feel free to use this." Mr. Johnson, "No, it's not a serious injury." Was he lost in thought until now? The man seemed surprised to notice me and hesitated to accept the offered handkerchief. But I insisted, pushing the handkerchief into his hands. "A handkerchief is meant for moments like this. It's been feeling neglected since I haven't used it lately. Would you mind giving it a chance to be useful?" "If that's the case, I'll use it. I'll make sure to return it. Thank you so much." The elevator doors opened in front of the male employee just as he accepted the handkerchief. It seemed to be his floor to get off. After he thanked me and said goodbye, I made sure no one else was getting on before closing the elevator doors. Once I reached the top floor, I headed to the president's room. As I was setting down my belongings and pulling out my work tools, I felt my cell phone vibrate in my pocket. Checking it, I saw a message from my wife, Tiffany. The message mentioned I had forgotten something. I muttered, "Shoot," and scratched my head. I had been working on some documents at home, and in the rush this morning, I must have left them on the table. They were needed for a meeting at noon, so it would be quite problematic without them. As I was typing a message asking my wife to bring them, a second message arrived saying she had already left the house. Tiffany is an amazing wife, far too good for me. She's always attentive to details and provides solid support for others. She's always been that way, even as a child. Living nearby, she would notice whenever I was hungry and would share her snacks or invite me over for a meal with her family's leftovers. This kindness continued even through middle and high school, which is why I proposed, wanting to make such a kind person happy. I confessed my love right after graduating from high school, at a time when I hadn't yet fully escaped from poverty. Yet, Tiffany decided to walk through life with me, which is quite astonishing. I was thrilled she accepted my proposal, but I still wonder why she chose me. I hope she'll tell me one day. While picturing my loving wife's face and checking my schedule, I organized my tasks. I remembered that we had planned a home party in a few weeks, inviting acquaintances, so I needed to start preparing. It will be a fun time, inviting many friends from high school and others I'm still close with. Feeling excited about the party, my secretary, Amy, came into the room. "Your wife called earlier. I'll take care of the forgotten item, so please focus on your work, Mr. Johnson." Tiffany also knows Amy's phone number. I registered it after my phone was ruined by water damage once. Being the president, it's critical to be reachable in emergencies. My apologies for the trouble. It's part of my job, please don't worry about it. I consider myself experienced at work, but I've been making small mistakes lately, so I need to stay focused. Recently, I nearly lost some documents in a panic and accidentally broke some work equipment due to carelessness. It might be due to some minor issues in my personal life. My wife, Tiffany has a mother named Iris. Iris, who is my mother-in-law, has been showing up frequently lately, which is quite draining. Even when I ask her reasons, she just says she wanted to see her daughter, leaving me uncertain about the correct way to handle the situation, which is the scary part. I can't directly tell her that her presence is causing me to make mistakes at work, so it's been a constant worry. Mr. Johnson, you are holding your pen upside down. My apologies, I was lost in thought. Since she's Tiffany's mother, I'd prefer to resolve things amicably, but I wonder if my wish will come true. Then, a few days later, while relaxing in a room on an upper floor of the high-rise apartment, Iris paid us another visit. Just the thought of her coming over again so soon was disheartening. Iris tends to fuss over the smallest things. If she sees me zoning out while Tiffany is doing chores, she complains that I'm letting her do all the hard work, and if Tiffany isn't dressed up, she insinuates that I'm not earning enough to afford decent clothes. Having to politely refute or explain each time is honestly tiring. This situation could end up overwhelming me. So, Tiffany, understanding how I feel, tries to reason with her stubborn mother. "Mom, please don't come over so much, I'm fine," Tiffany pleads. "What are you talking about? You're my precious daughter." Of course, I get worried. Do you really want to push me away even though I love you this much? Whenever Iris talks tearfully about her deep affection for her daughter, we've had no choice but to give in. After your father passed away, I worked hard to raise you all by myself. Raising you alone was incredibly challenging. I appreciate that, but I'm not your puppet. I have my own life. I want to live it my way. You say that, but living your way will lead you to a hellish end. If you'd just listen to me, you could be happy. Don't stay with such a poor man. Listen to me instead. Their arguments always end in a stalemate. Neither is willing to budge, so the conflict drags on for a long time. As I pondered how to calm the situation, the conversation took an unexpected turn. Iris continued speaking while casting furtive glances my way. "Tiffany, are you feeling guilty because someone from my company injured Michael's father?" The moment she heard those words, Tiffany's complexion changed instantly. All I could do was stare at her and say, "Huh?" This was news to me. I had never heard anything like it before. As I looked at Tiffany, visibly shaken, she cast her gaze downward, seemingly apologetic. "Did you have someone else you loved? Yet you married Michael, which I thought was strange. That's disrespectful to Michael." "Tiffany, is that true?" Tiffany nodded sadly. "I had intended to tell you someday," she said, looking at me with a caring gaze. "I accidentally overheard Mom talking on the phone with someone from her company. It seems an employee from her company, who had been drinking, caused an accident that injured your father years ago. The employee regretted driving after drinking alcohol. I'm so sorry. My dad never mentioned anything like that. The injury wasn't severe enough to break bones, but it led to his hospitalization, where they found his symptoms of overwork were more serious. But regardless of the circumstances, we caused you trouble." I reflected on our marriage with Tiffany. Come to think of it, had Tiffany ever really said she loves me? I've told her I loved her, but I'm not sure she ever reciprocated. "So you married me out of pity and guilt, and have been seeing another man behind my back." I felt a mix of understanding and sadness. Despite not wanting to appear weak, tears naturally started to flow. In fact, I knew about Tiffany's infidelity but had been turning a blind eye. Wanting to understand the strange anxiety I'd been feeling lately, I had looked into Tiffany's actions, even though I felt it was wrong. As a result, I discovered that Tiffany had been frequently meeting with the other man her mother mentioned. After being informed of this fact by the detective, I interrupted him as he tried to say more, shutting out any further information. "So I don't know the details about the other man." I had a handkerchief in my pocket, but using it felt like acknowledging the reality that I had cried, which I disliked. "I'm sorry. That's all I can say right now. You must hate me, don't you? The shock was too great, leaving my mind unable to function properly. There were many things I needed to consider, but I couldn't organize my thoughts properly. So, the words I managed to muster up were few. I've always seen you as someone precious to me, given all the support you've provided over time. I never wanted our marriage to be based on such circumstances. Whether these were the right words to say or if there were others, I couldn't tell. I tried hard to think, but my mind seemed to have failed me. A dark atmosphere filled the room. Yet, amidst this, Iris, with a smirk, began to speak cheerfully. It seems I'm in the way. You must have a lot to discuss, so I'll take my leave now. I wanted to hear about it from Tiffany herself, despite having my own thoughts on the matter. I clenched my fists and headed to the entrance to see Iris off. I knew facing her would only upset me more, but I chose to see her off to not forget this feeling. Iris's actions, speaking carelessly about things that would hurt others just because things weren't going her way, infuriated me. As Iris put on her shoes at the entrance, she sneered at me. What a pathetic look. Crying like a child and worrying Tiffany. You're not fit to be a husband. You should just get a divorce from her. Saying this, Iris placed her hand on my shoulder. She kept smirking as if she knew all along what I would do. You must be thinking about revenge or getting back at me, but it's futile. I'm the president of a major company. When my husband passed away, I took over the company, unsure at first, but it seems I had the talent. I've managed to grow the company even more than before. Iris then pressed down harder on my shoulder, saying, "That's why." Her nails dug into my skin, causing me to wince in pain. If you make an enemy of me, someone with wide connections, your company won't survive. You wouldn't want your employees to suffer because of you, would you? At her words, all I could do was clench my fists. How powerless I felt. Unable to retaliate against the woman in front of me. A few days after seeing Iris off, Tiffany and I divorced. However, we couldn't immediately start living separately, so we were still sharing the same room. It was just when work started to get busy, leaving me no time to attend to my personal life. To add insult to injury, a letter from Iris arrived for me. Thoughtfully using the company name, perhaps to ensure Tiffany wouldn't read it. Summarizing the content of the letter, it went something like this. It stated that a person who was once poor will always remain so, and no matter how much he tries to improve his appearance, his true nature cannot be changed. And the final blow was this line. Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor person. The straightforward message was infuriating. However, it was only natural that I would have to leave. This is because Tiffany has been paying for most of the rent for this high-rise apartment. Though Tiffany was a housewife, she had a decent income from introducing products on SNS. So, we had agreed that she would pay the rent instead of me covering her living expenses. I had accepted this arrangement, so it was only natural for me to be the one to leave. A few weeks later, as work finally gave me some breathing room, I began the moving process. Packing and arranging for removal workers was challenging, but with Tiffany's help, it went smoother than expected. Our relationship had become strained since then, but we could still talk normally when necessary and had thoroughly discussed our future. Even when she fell ill with a fever a few days ago, we cooperated and took care of each other. Despite our ability to care for each other so much, why did we have to divorce? I couldn't help but be plagued by this question. Every time, numerous questions I wanted to hear directly from Tiffany's mouth arose. What kind of person did she fall in love with? Would that person genuinely make Tiffany happy? But I was afraid to ask, fearing the answers might reveal someone better than me. If the person was indeed more outstanding and faultless, I might not be able to accept being left for such a reason. With that in mind, I had no choice but to keep quiet. In the midst of this, Just as we were engaged in moving, Iris paid a visit to the house. "So, you're finally leaving this place," she remarked. "Not yet. There's a lot of stuff, so this is just the beginning. I still have more to move out, so I'll be here for a while," I replied. Seeing Iris's apparent joy, I could feel irritation rising within me. Speaking sharply, I turned my back on her, no longer wanting to engage. However, as she saw the items being moved out, Iris exclaimed, "Huh!" Wondering what could have surprised her, I looked towards the items. They were a collection of jewelry, women's bags, and clothing. "Isn't this Tiffany's stuff? Why are you moving my daughter's things?" she asked. "No, these are mine. I bought them when the company started doing well," I explained. Back then, I didn't know Tiffany's tastes well and wasn't familiar with what women liked, so I just bought whatever caught my eye. I don't do that anymore, but back when my salary first started to increase, I wasn't sure how to spend it. When I later showed them to Tiffany, suggesting she can use whatever she liked, she was quite upset. I had read somewhere that women enjoy being treated to such things by men, so I tried it, but it seems I was mistaken. Looking back, I realized that the book I had read was written from a very biased viewpoint, which was a shocking discovery. I remember Tiffany being quite angry at the time. "Did you think I married you for this? I didn't choose to be with you for a life of luxury." It took 3 days and nights of continuous apologies to finally be forgiven, but instead of returning all the items to the store, I decided to keep them at home. The staff at the store had been so happy, saying, "This is the first time our sales have gone up so much. We thought we were going to go bankrupt, but now we can keep going." I couldn't bear to bring them despair. So, after explaining all this to Iris, she turned pale and looked away. "To think you had so much money. No, you were just showing off. That's impossible. There must be some trick to it. Maybe someone gave them to you, or you were saddled with unsellable stock." Although I couldn't make out the exact words of Iris's muttering under her breath, it was clear she was in shock. Eventually, after coming to some sort of internal resolution, she turned back to face me and repeated the same phrase she had written before. "Get out of my daughter's luxury apartment, you poor person." Hearing this, I gestured towards the back, indicating the removal workers' work, as if to say she was in the way. "The removal workers will be here soon." Because she wanted me gone, a sentiment that she should avoid hindering the workers seemed to get through to her. Seeing the removal workers return from loading the truck, Iris clicked her tongue and left the scene. The moving process continued to progress. However, we had to pause the work temporarily. The reason was that the day of the previously planned home party had arrived. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood for a party, but both Tiffany and I had the unfortunate tendency to prioritize others over ourselves. Thus, unable to disclose the truth about our divorce, the day arrived without our friends knowing the real situation. On that day, both Tiffany and I had to greet the steadily arriving acquaintances with feigned composure. It was quite awkward, but partway through, I managed to let go and pulled out a gaming console to play with friends, and together with Tiffany, we served the food we had prepared, enjoying the time with everyone. I couldn't help but wonder what I was doing in such a situation, but felt a bit relieved nonetheless. Perhaps it was because, with our friends around, we could revert to being a happy couple. Currently, there is no gloomy atmosphere in this room. The time spent laughing with Tiffany, just like before, was truly happy. Looking at Tiffany's smiling face, I was reminded of how much I truly loved her. Then, it was clear what I needed to do. After the divorce, I should support Tiffany in finding happiness. Despite the pain of her infidelity, the kindness she had shown me was significant, and I owed her that much. The challenge was to ensure Iris wouldn't interfere in her daughter's life, but I couldn't come up with a good solution on my own. Perhaps it was time to confide in our friends and seek their assistance. As I was pondering this, the doorbell rang, making me tilt my head in confusion. After all, everyone I had invited should already be inside this room. Could it be a neighbor, or perhaps a delivery person who got the wrong address? Opening the door with this thought, I found Iris standing there. After making a bombshell statement in front of us and sending a letter that felt like harassment, I didn't expect her to still come here. What could possibly be going on in her mind? I came to see how my daughter is doing, but, oh, do you have guests? Stepping into the entrance, Iris was surprised to see several pairs of shoes. I wonder if I'm intruding. Even Iris, who always seems to intrude on us, seemed uncomfortable in a space filled with strangers. I wish she could apply that bit of common sense to other aspects of her behavior, but trying to understand her thought process is probably a waste of time. Noticing the commotion in the room, Iris quickly tried to leave, but a friend stopped her. Friends who gathered at the entrance to see the visitor introduced themselves one after another to Iris. "Are you Tiffany's mother? Nice to meet you. I work for a website development company." "Oh, I work in social media management. What brings you here today?" Faced with a barrage of questions from many people, Iris looked bewildered, not knowing how to respond. Feeling slightly vindicated by her discomfiture, I pondered how to get Iris to leave. It's rare to see her at a loss, and part of me wanted to watch a bit longer, but it would be troublesome if she said something unnecessary like last time. So, I was about to speak up, but Iris beat me to it. "Everyone, I have something to talk about, would you listen?" On guard about what she might do, it seemed she wanted to talk about Tiffany's boyfriend. I and Tiffany know someone named Jake. He's a wonderful person. Wealthy, gentlemanly, elegant, and young in his 20s. He looks like he stepped right out of a movie. Those gathered took her friend bragging as the start of a story and seemed interested in hearing more, but I thought it best to stop her. Catching a glimpse of me, Iris smirked as if she had something mischievous in mind. She's probably up to no good, so I want to stop her from speaking if possible. I start to say, "Iris, don't you have other matters to attend to?" But she firmly replied, "It's all right. Jake looks great standing next to Tiffany. Look at this photo. Wouldn't you want someone like him as a marriage partner? What do you all think about your ideal spouse?" Iris showed us photos taken on her cell phone, and her face lit up with a look of triumph. It seemed she was trying to corner me mentally. Even though she doesn't take such an action, I'm already set on divorcing Tiffany. Friends commented on the youthful man in the photos, sharing their thoughts. "He looks good, but it's important to be with someone you love." Right, no matter how perfect someone might seem, marrying for love is what matters most. Iris, showing her phone screen to those around her, frowned in confusion. "What are you saying? Love alone won't make you happy. For example, Michael might be well off now, but he came from poverty. Isn't that worrying?" "Oh, I don't mean this as an insult, just curious about your opinions." Seeing that the conversation wasn't going as she had hoped, Iris expressed her opinion with a dissatisfied look on her face. However, no one agreed with her viewpoint. Life is unpredictable for anyone. If that's the case, it's best to be with someone you love. Even if someone meets all the criteria, marrying without love is unfair to the other person. Of course, love doesn't guarantee everything will work out, just as money doesn't. Iris furrowed her brows and bit her lip. It seemed she had many grievances, but she had no intention of voicing them to the others. "Actually, I remembered I have an errand to run today. I'll take my leave now." Seemingly upset, Iris quickly left. After she left, friends who had come to say goodbye returned to the room, but then Iris took out a few cloves of garlic. "Well, I should be going, but Michael, you really should think about Tiffany's happiness and leave her as soon as possible." After saying this, Iris put the garlic inside my shoes and threw some toward me before leaving the entrance. Witnessing her blatantly obvious actions, I was paralyzed and couldn't move. As a result, the clove of garlic hit me. It was amusing to see Iris at a loss for words and flustered by my friend's ribbitals, but the price with being hit by the garlic was disheartening. Tiffany, who had stayed behind instead of following the others, hurriedly asking me whether I am okay or not with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry about my mother. It's not your fault. I should have moved, but I was too stunned to react." After picking up some cloves of garlic, I sighed and headed back to join my friends. Joining the circle of friends who were chatting a few minutes later, I received curious looks. A clove of garlic still in my hair drew wide-eyed stares from my friends, but unable to explain properly, I mumbled something vague instead. Curious about the images they were looking at on a cell phone, I quickly changed the subject. "What's that?" Upon asking, it turned out they were looking at images on Jake's social media. They got curious because of what Iris had said and decided to check it out immediately. The face on the cell phone screen was indeed the same one Iris had shown us earlier. He seemed to be quite wealthy, with numerous luxury items and travel photos on his social media, including several shots of a high-end room filled with elegant furniture. However, something about those photos felt off to me. It was a room I recognized all too well. My friends seemed to notice it too. Tiffany addressed me as their spokesperson. "Michael, isn't this one of the rooms in our apartment building?" "Yeah, I remember it from helping another resident move. I've been inside that room." Our building's interiors vary slightly from floor to floor and room to room, so no two are exactly alike, but the basic layout is the same, which is why it clicked. "Hey, someone's posted something strange on this guy's social media," a friend pointed out. Amidst my skepticism, I was taken aback when I saw the comment my friend had discovered. It contained crucial information about Jake's true identity. I rushed after Iris. Fortunately, she hadn't left the building yet. I managed to catch her at the entrance. "What's the matter? You seem in such a hurry. Did I forget something?" I had to tell Iris, who was tilting her head in confusion in front of me, about Jake's true identity. "Iris, Jake is a marriage con artist." I wished to spare Tiffany from this conversation, but it seems she followed me. Catching up from behind, she spoke to Iris. "Mom, you're being deceived. Please, wake up." Hearing that, I felt a strong sense of discomfort and asked Tiffany. She was supposed to have been deceived just like her mother, yet she didn't seem shocked at all. "Weren't you in love with Jake?" "Not at all. I only started talking to him because he picked up the precious handkerchief you gave me when I dropped it." Tiffany apologized in a small voice. "I'm sorry." She must have thought I wouldn't believe her right after her secret was revealed. Since then, she hadn't found the right moment to tell me, so she kept silent. Relieved that she wasn't cheating, I felt slightly at ease. "Let's talk about that later. Listen, Mom. Jake has been involved in other scams, often tricking acquaintances into buying expensive items. Has he sold you anything?" Surprised by the sudden topic, Iris was quite candid. "Yes, he introduced me to vases and paintings." "No way." When Tiffany showed her Jake's social media on her cell phone, reading the victim's comments turned her pale. Was I wrong? It seems he pretended to be wealthy using items he scanned from others, and those house photos, they're from a showroom. Look closely, they all lack a personal touch. Realizing this, Iris stared at the photos lacking any personal belongings before collapsing to her knees. Having visited our apartment many times, she quickly recognized the photos on social media as being from our place. "See, Mom, having money doesn't guarantee happiness. I only wanted what's best. To think I was wrong, I'm a failure as a mother." Tiffany didn't offer any more comforting words to her. "If you understand, then stop imposing your views on me. I'll seize my own happiness. I'll live the life I choose." Knowing her mother's pride, she likely wanted her to reflect properly instead of offering empty consolation. After witnessing her mother's continuous tears, all she did was hand her a handkerchief to hold. Without hugging or wiping her tears, she returned to the room. "I'm sorry for using the handkerchief you gave me on my mom. You've been troubled by her for so long," she apologized. "No, it's fine. I got to see quite a bit of her troublesome side today, and besides, that handkerchief was the first gift I ever gave you. I was happy to see you've kept it with care all this time," I responded. We divorced to live our own lives. Iris's actions may have been the catalyst, but we won't overturn this decision for each other's sake. Tiffany had kept important things from me, and I failed to see through her secrets. Moreover, I even suspected her of cheating. Perhaps our paths will cross again someday, but for now, we must live separately, pondering over the mistakes we've made. Afterward, Iris seemed to return home in a state of exhaustion. Her behavior became unexpectedly subdued in the following days, as if her previous actions were all a lie. Unable to perform her duties as president satisfactorily anymore, it seems she retired. After moving to some rural area, she appears to be living quietly on her own, cutting off interactions with others. Later, we received an apology letter from her. We hadn't replied yet since we're not ready to forgive, but we hope to reach that point someday. Meanwhile, we started living in separate homes. After completing the move and informing our friends about the divorce, I spent my time alone, reflecting on various things. However, that solitude didn't last long. Tiffany joined my company as an employee, so we ended up seeing each other on work days. Our relationship as boss and subordinate was different from before, but those days weren't too bad. I was surprised when she eventually took over Amy's position as my secretary after she left, but even so, we enjoyed our days together. Tiffany, always attentive to details, excelled at supporting others. "Mr. Johnson, you have a bird's feather in your hair. Did you help a fallen chick back into its nest like you did when you were a child? Here. It's gone now," she noted. Thanks. I hadn't noticed, but it's surprising you remember something from so long ago," I remarked. "Our relationship may have ended, but I cherished every moment spent with you. They're all precious memories to me." "Oh, and you're holding your pen upside down," she pointed out. Thus, she continued to assist me in my daily work. On my next day off, I plan to take my parents on a trip. I'm also planning to rebuild their house, which will be busy but something I look forward to. Despite the hardships and pain, knowing that collaboration can help overcome challenges, I decided to always value the connections with others, no matter what form they may take.